Today's dramatic turn of events mean Labor will have to come up with a whole new strategy to counter a new leader. The Premier, as we've already heard, won't rule out an early election. I caught up with her during a break at Parliament earlier. Premier, you've sworn black and blue that 2011 is going to be a rebuilding year and not an election year. Are you really about to break that promise to Queenslanders?
In my view, 2011 should be a rebuilding year, but we've now have extraordinary circumstances that frankly nobody could have predicted, including myself. We've got the Liberal National Party systematically undermining the parliamentary democracy of our state. Our Parliament, I think, at risk of descending into a dysfunctional farce. The Lord Mayor of our capital city walking away from the rebuilding program here in the city, and an unelected person in Bruce McIver directing how the elected members of the opposition will vote and conduct themselves. I don't think anyone could have predicted that, and in those circumstances I think it's understandable that I don't think I can any longer rule anything in or anything out. We'll have to see how this plays out. The Lord Mayor has had weeks to think about this. He's obviously been plotting and planning it. For the rest of us, 24 hours is not long to get used to something that puts Queensland in democratically uncharted waters.
If you do hold an early election, how could voters see that as anything but a cynical political move? I mean, many Queenslanders are still rebuilding. Are they really in a position to go to the polls?
What I think those people in Brisbane who are sitting in the shells of their houses, whose lives have been turned upside down by these events, will be thinking is, how long has the Lord Mayor been thinking about his political career instead of thinking about me and my neighbourhood? And they must be wondering tonight what on earth they will do without the Lord Mayor to help rebuild their city. The Lord Mayor has decided to cut and run. How can we rebuild Queensland unless we can also rebuild the capital of our state? These are extraordinary circumstances. They're not of my making. I don't think they're in the interests of Queensland, and I think I'm obliged to at least reflect on them before making any decisions.
Are you just running scared?
What I think people look for in leaders is character. And when they see a Lord Mayor who has walked away from his city at a time when they needed him most, when they're facing the worst natural disaster that we've ever had, I think that goes directly to the question of character. And ultimately that will be in the hands of Queenslanders.
Is it not so much a question of Campbell Newman walking away from his city as Campbell Newman wanting to look after the rest of Queensland, not just his city?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that Campbell Newman has unabated ambition here, and he's put his personal ambitions ahead of the interests of the people of this city that need someone who are committed to them. This is, in my view, unprecedented. I can't think of anybody else in a leadership position who would walk away from a disaster that affected the people they were responsible for. And that is something that I think people will make a judgment about.
That sounds like it might be a recurring theme in an election campaign.
I'm not in a position, and I don't really think people would expect me to be today, to rule in or rule out anything that might happen next. These are extraordinary circumstances. Now we have an opposition that is led by a self-confessed fake leader in the Queensland Parliament. Queenslanders deserve a parliament that functions, just like every other state of Australia. They deserve an opposition leader here in the parliament holding a government to account. They don't have that anymore.
Just because that hasn't been done here in Queensland Parliament before, does that mean it can't work?
It seems to me absolutely contrary to the foundations of our democratic system to have people outside the parliament, unelected by anybody. Bruce McIver's name has never been on a state ballot paper, now directing the parliamentary party as to how they will vote and how they will account for themselves. In our democracy, you are accountable to the people through the ballot box, and that's the way it should be. It doesn't seem to be the way it operates now in the Liberal National Party.
Do you consider Campbell Newman to be a more formidable opponent than John Paul Langbroek? Is this a whole new ballgame?
I look at Campbell Newman and I see someone who has walked away from his constituents at the very moment they most needed leadership. This is someone whose character, I think, will be very much a question at the next election.
Premier, thank you.
Thank you.